when silence speaks louder. James stood in front of that house, the same house where it all began, and where it all, in a way, also ended. He didn't have the courage to ring the doorbell. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from something much deeper. It was fear that it would be too late. The door remained the same, faded blue, the paint peeling around the edges. He remembered when she'd chosen that color. Blue is hope, she'd said, smiling that way, that made the world seem lighter. But today, that blue just looked sad. James took a deep breath. He knew he had to do this, not for himself, but for her. For the woman he'd let go without even saying how he truly felt. How often do we ignore what's right in front of us? How often do we think we have time, that people will always be there, waiting? He thought he had time, but there wasn't. Today, standing there with the cold November wind blowing on his face, James finally understood. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here because he'd discovered something that changed everything, something she'd never told him, something he only learned too late. And now that secret wasn't just going to change his past, it was going to change who he thought he was. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss heartwarming stories. When everything was simple. 7 years ago, James's life was completely different. He woke up every day at 6 in the morning. Black coffee, no sugar, buttered toast. Always the same routine, because routine gave control. And James liked control. He worked at an accounting firm in downtown Portland. Numbers, spreadsheets, reports. Everything had to make sense. Everything had to add up. And when it didn't, James stayed late at the office, tweaking, fixing, until everything was perfect. He was good at what he did, very good. His colleagues respected that, but they also kept their distance. James wasn't the type to stop for a chat in the hallway or go out for a beer after work. He was polite, professional, but distant. And at home, well, at home was Emily. Emily was everything James wasn't. She laughed out loud. She sang while cooking. She left things out of place. She forgot to close the toothpaste cap. She invited neighbors over for dinner without warning. At first, James found it charming, refreshing. Emily brought color into his life, but over time those colors began to bother me. The laughter seemed too loud. The conversations with strangers seemed unnecessary. The spontaneity seemed irresponsible. Emily tried. She really tried. James, check out this new recipe I found. Let's make it together tonight. I have a lot of work, Emily. Honey, the neighbor invited us to a barbecue on Saturday. It's going to be fun. I'm not really into that stuff. You can go if you want. She always went, alone. And little by little, without James noticing, her smile grew smaller. Her attempts became fewer. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed. But James didn't see, or didn't want to see. He thought everything was fine. After all, they had a home, bills paid, a stable life. What more could she want? What James didn't understand was that Emily didn't want more things. She wanted more from him. But he was always too busy to notice, always too busy to see that he was missing out on what really mattered. When cracks appear, it was on a Tuesday that Emily popped the question. They were eating dinner in silence. She'd made lasagna, his favorite dish. But James barely touched his food, shuffling through work papers beside his plate. James, do you still love me? The question came softly, almost a whisper, but it sounded like thunder in that silent kitchen. He looked up in surprise. Of course. Why are you asking this? Emily picked at her food with her fork. She didn't look at him. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like you're here, but you're not really present, you know? James sighed. That kind of talk made him uncomfortable. Emily, I work all day to give us a good life. I'm tired. That doesn't mean I don't love you. She finally looked at him. There was something different about that look, something James couldn't quite decipher. "I know you work hard. I just miss you, even when you're here." James didn't know what to say, so he returned to his papers. Emily didn't bring up the subject again that night. But something changed. In the following days, she stopped asking about his day. She stopped suggesting plans. She stopped trying to fit into his routine. Instead, Emily started going out more. Painting classes on Tuesdays, walks in the park on Saturday mornings, meeting up with friends James hadn't even met. He should have been happy. After all, she was busy, had her own things to do. She wasn't demanding his attention anymore. But deep down, something was bothering him. One night, James came home to find Emily on the couch, painting on a small canvas. She was so absorbed that she didn't even notice him walk in. "What is this?" he asked. Emily jumped a little, startled. Then she smiled, but it was a different smile, softer, more distant. "I'm painting. I started in class." James stared at the screen. It was a sunset. Orange, pink, purple, vibrant colors that seemed to want to leap off the screen. "It looks nice," he said, without much emotion. "Thanks." Silence. James went to the office. Emily continued painting. And so the next few months went. They lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, but it was as if they were in different worlds. Emily didn't fight. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for attention. She just walked away, slowly, like a tide receding silently. And James, he thought everything was fine. He thought it was just a phase, that things would go back to normal. But James's normal was never the normal Emily needed. And when she finally made the decision, it was almost without warning. "James, I need some time." He was reading reports when she said that. He didn't even look up. A time of what? Of us. "I need space. I need to figure some things out." Now James looked at her. Emily was serious, more serious than he had ever seen her. "Are you serious?" "Yes. Emily, this is ridiculous. Couples go through phases. No need for drama." She took a deep breath, and in that moment, James saw something in her eyes that frightened him. It was acceptance. Emily had already made her decision, and she wasn't going to back down. "I'm going to stay at my sister's house for a while, just until we sort things out." James didn't believe it. He thought she would give up the next day. But Emily packed her bags that very night, and when she walked out the door, she looked back only once. "I loved you, James. I really did. I hope one day you'll understand that." The door closed, and James was left alone in that big, silent, perfect house. But for the first time he felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't relief. It was empty. When regret comes 2 weeks. That was all James could take. The first 2 nights he thought he was going to be fine. He got back into his routine. Work, home, sleep. Simple. No complications. But on the 3rd night, the house seemed too big. On Wednesday, the silence became deafening. On Thursday, he realized he couldn't cook anything other than scrambled eggs. And on Friday, he sat on the couch and, for the first time in years, cried. James didn't know he missed her so much. He didn't know that Emily's small gestures were what kept that house alive. The coffee she left ready every morning, the flowers she placed on the living room table, the smell of cake on Sunday, the way she hummed as she tidied up, all that was gone. And James finally realized. But realizing wasn't enough. He picked up the phone. He called Emily once, twice, 5 times. She didn't answer, sent messages. "Emily, can we talk? I know I messed up. Give me a chance. Please come home." Nothing. Until after 3 days of silence, she replied, "James, I need this time. It's not about you being wrong or right. It's about me losing myself, trying to be what you needed. I need to find myself again." James read that message 10 times, 20, 30, and with each reading, the guilt tightened. He began to remember things he had forgotten or ignored. He remembered the time Emily had asked him to take time off and travel with her, just for a weekend. He'd said he couldn't. He had an important presentation. He remembered her birthday 2 years ago. He'd completely forgotten. He came home late, and she was sitting in the kitchen with a cake she'd made herself, alone. She smiled and said everything was fine, but James saw the sadness in her eyes. She remembered the nights when she tried to talk to him, and he responded with monosyllables, his eyes glued to his cell phone. How many times did she try? How many times was he just not there? Guilt turned to despair. James started toward Emily's sister's house. He rang the doorbell. Emily's sister, Sarah, opened the door with a cold look. "She doesn't want to see you, James. Just 5 minutes. I just need to talk to her. She asked me to tell you no. Respect that." And the door closed. He tried to send flowers. Emily returned them. He tried to send letters. He never received a reply. He tried to show up at the park where she was walking. She turned and walked away. James was desperate, lost. He didn't recognize his own life. One night he called the only friend he had, David, a co-worker who always tried to strike up a conversation with him. "David, I messed up." David listened, and at the end he said something James would never forget. "James, you've always been good at fixing numbers, but you can't fix people. Sometimes we have to accept that we missed our chance and learn from it." But James didn't want to learn. He wanted Emily back. The months passed, 3, 4, 6. Emily remained distant, and James remained alone, drowning in regret and longing, until one afternoon in April he got a call. It was Sarah, Emily's sister. "James, I need to tell you something." Her voice was shaky. "What's wrong? Is it Emily? Is she okay?" Silence on the other side. "Sarah, James." "Emily is in the hospital." His world stopped. "What? What happened?" She fainted this morning. They rushed her in. The doctors are running tests, but what, Sarah? "They think it's serious. You need to come." James didn't think twice. He dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. When he arrived, he was panting and desperate. He found Sarah in the waiting room, her eyes red. "Where is she? Can I see her?" Sarah looked at him, and there was something different in that look, something that mixed anger with pity. "You can. But James, there's one thing you need to know first." "What is it?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Emily has been sick for almost a year." James felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "Like this?" "She found out last year. Cancer. She didn't want to tell you because she thought you wouldn't really care, that you'd just feel sorry for her." Sarah's words were like knives. I didn't know. She never told me anything. Because you never asked, James. You never asked how she really was. And in that moment, James understood. All those painting classes, the walks, the moments when she was quiet, distant. It wasn't just sadness, it was pain, real, physical, emotional. And he had never realized it. When the truth begins to appear, James walked into the hospital room with shaking legs. Emily lay in bed, pale, with wires and tubes attached. But when she saw him, she managed a small smile, weak, weary, but still a smile. "Hi, James." He couldn't speak. The words stuck in his throat. All he could do was sit in the chair beside the bed and hold her hand. She was so thin, so fragile. How had he not seen it before? "Emily, why didn't you tell me?" She looked up at the ceiling. She breathed slowly. "Because I needed to know if you loved me for who I was. Not out of pity, not out of obligation. I love you, Emily. I always have." She turned her face to him, and in that look was something that broke James's heart. It was forgiveness, but it was also goodbye. "I know you love, James, in your own way, but your way wasn't what I needed." He held her hand tighter. "Give me another chance. I'll change. I promise." Emily smiled again, but it was a sad smile. "It's not about changing, love. It's about it already being too late." They were silent for a long time. James didn't want to leave. He didn't want to let go of that hand. But the nurses came in. Emily needed to rest. The tests had been tough. "You can come back tomorrow," one of the nurses said kindly. James left the room with a broken heart. For the next few days he came to the hospital every day. Sometimes Emily was awake. Sometimes she was asleep, but he was always there, just holding her hand. They talked about small things, about memories, about the early years when everything was simpler. And slowly, James began to see Emily again. Not the woman he'd taken for granted, but the woman she'd always been. Strong, kind, full of life, even when her life was being taken from her. One afternoon, while Emily was sleeping, Sarah entered the room. "James, can I talk to you outside?" They went out into the hallway. Sarah looked nervous. She was holding something in her hands, an old yellowed brown envelope. "What is this?" he asked. "Emily asked me to give this to you, in case something happened to her." James felt his stomach churn. "She won't." "James, the doctors said there's not much more they can do. It's a matter of weeks, maybe days." The words cut deep. Sarah held out the envelope. "She wrote this months ago. She said that when the time was right I would know, and I think that time is now." James took the envelope with trembling hands. "What's here?" "I don't know. She wouldn't let me read it. She said it was just for you." Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. "Read it carefully, James, and try to understand." She went back into the room. James stood alone in the hallway, staring at the envelope. He was afraid to open it, afraid of what he would find inside. "But I needed to know." He walked into the empty waiting room. He sat down. He took a deep breath, and it opened. Inside were several sheets of paper, handwritten, Emily's delicate handwriting. The first page simply said, "For James, for when you're ready to listen." He turned the page and began to read. "Dear James, if you're reading this, you probably already know about my illness, and you're probably blaming yourself. I know you. I know how your mind works. But I need you to know a few things I've never had the courage to tell you in person. I loved you from day one. Remember, we bumped into each other at that coffee shop, and you spilled my cappuccino. You were so embarrassed, apologizing 10 times. It was the first time I saw you truly present, truly human. And I fell in love with that man. Not the successful man, not the organized man, but the man who got angry and bought me 3 cappuccinos as an excuse. But over the years, that man disappeared, and I don't know if it was life, work, or if you were always like this and I just hadn't noticed. I tried to reach you, James. I tried so hard, but it was like screaming into a glass window. You were there, but you couldn't hear me. And when I found out I was sick, my first reaction was to tell you, to run to you. But then I stopped and thought, will he stay with me out of love or out of duty? And I didn't want to be a duty, not to you, so I decided to walk away, to live my remaining time however I chose, without burden, without pressure. But there's something I need you to know. James turned the page, tears streaming down his face, and what he read on the next page changed everything. When the heart breaks. James read the next few lines with his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the paper. James, 3 years ago, I discovered something that changed my life. Something I never imagined would happen. I was pregnant. Remember that weekend I spent at my mom's house? I'd gone to the doctor. I'd been feeling strange for weeks, tired, nauseous. And then, there it was. A tiny heartbeat on the ultrasound screen. I cried, James. I cried with happiness. It was all I ever wanted. A baby. Our family growing. I came home determined to tell you. I bought a tiny blue shoe. I wrapped it in gift paper. I prepared a special dinner. But when you arrived that night, you barely looked at me. You'd had a hard day at work. You ate quickly and went straight to the office. I stood there, holding that bundle, practicing the words. James, we're having a baby. It's that simple. But you didn't leave the office, and I ended up going to sleep, alone, with the gift hidden in the drawer. I tried again the next day, and the day after that, but it never seemed like the right time. You were always tired, always busy, always distant. And then, 2 weeks later, I started bleeding. I rushed to the hospital, alone, because you were in an important meeting and I didn't want to disturb you. The doctor told me it was a miscarriage, that these things happen, that it wasn't my fault. But it felt like it. It felt like I had failed, as a mother, as a woman, as a wife. I went home that day and hid everything, the pain, the loss, the little blue shoe that would never be worn. You didn't even notice. You didn't even notice that I had been crying all day, that I was destroyed inside. And it was in that moment, James, that I understood. I was alone. Even beside you, I was completely alone. I tried to move on. I tried to convince myself that everything was okay, but it wasn't. And when, a year later, I discovered I had cancer, I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed to get out. I needed to find myself. I needed to learn to live without depending on someone who didn't even realize I was dying inside. Forgive me for not telling you about the baby. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But it was too late. And I couldn't bear the pain alone anymore. James released the leaves. They fell to the ground, scattered. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. A baby. Emily had lost a baby, their baby, and he didn't even know it. How did he not notice? How was he so blind, so selfish, so absent? The tears came down hard. James put his face in his hands and cried like he had never cried in his life. He cried for the woman he loved and was losing. He cried for the son he never knew. He cried for all the moments he wasted, for all the times she needed him, and he wasn't there. I don't know how much time passed, maybe minutes, maybe hours. When he finally managed to compose himself, James picked up the leaves from the ground. There was still more. He wiped his eyes and continued reading. But James, I need you to know something. I don't blame you. You are who you are. And for so long I tried to change you. I tried to make you the man I needed. But that's not fair. To you or to me. People love each other in different ways, and maybe our love just wasn't compatible. But that doesn't make love any less true. It just makes it incomplete. And that's okay. I've learned to forgive myself for not being enough for you. And I hope that one day you'll forgive yourself too. Because life is too short to carry guilt. Live, James. Really live. Don't just exist. Love someone in a way they feel, not just in a way you think is right. And if you want to honor me, do it by being present to the people who matter before it's too late. I will always love you, even now, even in the end, with all my heart, Emily. James closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he understood what true repentance meant. It wasn't just sadness, it wasn't just guilt. It was the certainty that you had the chance to do things differently, and you didn't. He folded the sheets carefully and put them in his pocket close to his heart. Then he got up and went back to Emily's room. She was awake, staring out the window. The late afternoon light bathed her face, and for a moment she looked like the same girl he'd met in that coffee shop. James sat down beside her. He held her hand. I read it, he said, his voice breaking. Emily turned to face him. Her eyes were shining. And now you know, Emily, I'm so sorry for everything, for the baby, for not being there, for being so... Shh! She squeezed his hand. No need. I forgave you a long time ago. But I didn't forgive myself. So learn. Learn and let go, James. Because holding on to it won't change anything. It will only hurt you more. They stayed like that, in silence, holding hands, watching the sun set through the window, and James understood that this was farewell. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with peace. When everything makes sense. Emily passed away 3 days later. It was smooth, quick, as if she'd simply decided it was time to rest. James was beside her, holding her hand, and when she took her last breath, he felt as if a part of him had gone with her. The funeral was small, just family and a few close friends. Emily had asked for a simple one, no drama, no long speeches, but James made a point of saying a few words. Emily taught me many things, but the greatest lesson, she taught me too late. She taught me that love isn't just about being physically present, it's about truly being present, body, mind, and soul. And I failed at that. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor her memory, being the man she always deserved, for the people who are still here. After the funeral, Sarah approached James. "There's one more thing," she said, handing him a small wooden box. "What is it?" "Emily asked me to give this to you after she left. She said it was the last thing, the last secret." James looked at the box. He was afraid to open it, afraid of feeling more pain. But Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. "Open up, James. This won't hurt you. I promise." He waited until he got home. He sat on the couch, the same couch where Emily painted, where she smiled, where she tried to connect with him. He took a deep breath and opened the box. Inside there were 3 things. First, the little blue shoe. Small, delicate, never worn. James held that little shoe in his hands and wept. He wept for the son he never knew, for the pain Emily carried alone. Second, there was a notebook. James opened it. It was a diary, pages and pages written in Emily's hand. He began to read, and on each page he discovered a piece of her he had never known. Your hopes, your fears, your joys, your sorrows. There were drawings too. Dream scribbles, a house with a garden, a child running in the yard. She and James holding hands, watching the sunset. Simple things. But they meant everything to her. James realized Emily had a whole world inside her, a world he'd never bothered to explore. And now it was too late. The third thing in the box was a letter, small, folded, with his name written on the front. James unfolded it carefully. "James, if you've made it this far, it's because I've already left, and I sincerely hope you're at peace. I wanted to leave you with one last thing, not a sad memory, but a happy memory. Remember the day we met? You spilled my coffee and were so embarrassed that you bought 3 new ones and said, 'Choose which one you want. I'll pay for them all.' I laughed so hard that day, and I thought, this man has a good heart. He just needs to learn to show it. And I still believe that, James. You have a good heart. It just got forgotten under so much work, so much routine, so much fear of feeling. But now you know. Now you felt it. And I hope this transforms you. Not to be perfect, but to be present. There's one last thing I never told you. I went to the doctor a week before I discovered I had cancer. I was feeling strange again, tired, dizzy, and for a brief moment I thought maybe I was pregnant again. I took the test, and it wasn't there. But in that brief moment of hope, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt alive, because the possibility of having a child, of starting a family, of really having you with me, that made me believe that there was still time. But there wasn't, James. And when I discovered the cancer soon after, I understood that it was a sign. It was life telling me, you waited too long, now it's too late. But for you, James, it's not too late. You still have time to live, to love, to be present. Don't waste this time. And if one day you find someone who makes you truly smile, don't let her go. Don't do to her what you did to me. Hold on tight. Be present. Love with everything you have. Because life is short, and love is the only thing that really matters. I will always love you, James, always, and wherever I am now, I'll be cheering for you. Be happy, for me, for you, for us, with all my eternal love, Emily." James folded the letter slowly, The tears fell silently, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of acceptance, of understanding, of gratitude. Emily was gone, but she had left something for him, a lesson, a chance, one last gift. She had taught him, even in death, how to live. James looked around the empty house, and for the first time, he didn't just feel sadness, felt purpose. He couldn't change the past. He couldn't bring Emily back. He couldn't be the man she needed when she was here. But I could honor her memory. I could learn, grow, change. I could really live. And that's what he did. The new beginning. 2 years have passed since Emily left. James still lived in the same house. But it wasn't the same anymore. There were flowers on the living room table, paintings on the walls. Some Emily had painted, others James had bought at local art fairs. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee every morning. And James, he wasn't the same either. He still worked at the accounting firm, but now he left on time. He ate lunch with his colleagues. He asked how they were doing. He really did. On Saturdays, he volunteered at a shelter. He helped families. He talked to people. He listened to their stories. And every Tuesday, without fail, he would visit Emily's grave. He would bring flowers. He would sit there for a few minutes, and he would tell her about his week. "Today I helped a single mother organize her finances," he said one of those afternoons. "She thanked me with tears in her eyes, and I understood, Emily. I understood that being present in someone's life, that's worth more than any spreadsheet I've ever made." The wind blew gently, making the leaves on the tree next door dance. James smiled. "You would be proud of me. I hope you are." He remained silent for a few more minutes. Then he stood up, touched the tombstone affectionately, and left. On the way back, he stopped at a coffee shop, the same one where he had met Emily all those years ago. He ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window. And that's when he saw her. A woman, maybe 40, brown hair tied in a loose ponytail, glasses, a gentle smile as she read a book. She was sitting alone, completely immersed in reading. James wasn't going to do anything. He was just watching, distracted. But then she got up to get a napkin and accidentally bumped into his table. James's cappuccino spilled. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said, hurriedly grabbing napkins to clean up. "I'm so clumsy. I'm so sorry." James smiled, a real smile. "It's okay. It happens." She stopped cleaning and looked at him, a little surprised at how calm he was. "Seriously, I'm a walking disaster. Let me buy you another coffee. It's the least I can do." James was about to say he didn't need to, but then he stopped. He remembered Emily's words. "If one day you find someone who really makes you smile, don't let them go." He looked at the woman in front of him and smiled again. "Okay, I accept, but only if you have one with me." She blinked in surprise. Then she smiled too, combined. She walked back to the counter, ordered 2 cappuccinos, and sat at James's table. "I'm Rachel," she said, extending her hand. "James," he replied, squeezing her hand. And there, in that coffee shop, where it all began years ago, James felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Not a hope of replacing Emily, no one could do that, but a hope that life went on, and that he was finally ready to live it. In truth. What about you? Have you ever experienced something similar? Have you ever realized someone's worth too late? Leave a comment. Your story matters. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends, because stories of love, loss, and new beginnings need to be told and remembered. Until next time, and remember, it's never too late to be there for the ones you love now.